Hello, it's Trisha here of So Totally Trisha. I'm going to show you how to make a one seamed flying geese. So all we need is one rectangle, which is 3.5 by 6.5, and two 3.5 inch squares. So what we need to do is take our rectangle, fold it along the long side and wrong sides together. We're going to place that on top of one of the 3.5 inch squares and align a short edge, the 3.5 inch edge. I'm going to put myself a pin on there just to hold it. And then I'm going to place the other 3.5 inch square right sides together onto that sandwich. Let's make sure that's lined up, so it should line up along all edges, and we'll pop that one onto there, and we can pop our pin in again. Now what we do need to notice, we've got all those layers together, but the seam we stitch is this seam here. We must make sure the folded edge is at the top of our sandwich. So I'm going to make sure that seam aligns and all the raw edges, and I'm going to stitch with 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way to the other end. And we will open that out. But what I'm going to do first of all, because of the bulk in this seam, we just need to open the seam out, but we just need to clip that fold that is in that seam, put our fingers in there and either nail press or use a seam roller just so that that is nice and flat. Turn it to the other side, and then we can open out this folded piece, and there we have our own flying geese block. So we can just gently smooth our fingers down that side, and there is your flying geese. Now I've got one already made, so I'm going to put two together and show you the next step, but that was just one seam to make that flying geese. So let me just hold those edges at the long edge there, just line them up, and I'm just going to do a basting row along the bottom here just to hold that nicely together and just make sure those seams align. So if we just stitch across there, and then I'm going to bring in my second one, which I have already made, and the two can be placed. So I've got one in one direction, one in the other, but if we place them right sides together, make sure that that center point or the seams there align so that we get a nice center intersection, and then align those other edges, and we'll do our seam as usual, 1/4 inch along this edge. Take that pin out, make sure everything is still aligning. And then when we open it out, what we've got is the beginnings of a cathedral window. So I'm going to do exactly the same again here. Just open these seams out, run my finger along, just so that we've got a flatter seam line. And this could easily be made into a little pincushion if you just want to make the two of them, or something even bigger. So I'm just popping my fingers down there, and we could give that a good press. Now, if you want to take it one step further, what we can do is, because these edges are on the bias, they are stretchy, so we could actually pull that back around to there, and we could stitch around this edge. So that is what I am going to do. So just to keep that point in there, I'm just going to use the end of my seam ripper and just alter the stitch length up just a little bit, and I'm going to stitch around the curve, and I'm holding my finger at this other end so that we get a nice sharp point along here. Then I'm going to pivot, and I'm going to do the same along this edge. So at the center, just roll that back, make sure that rolls nicely into the point where we are at the moment, and just stitch into that next edge, pivot slightly and carry on around. So again, I'm just holding that down to the other seam, and we can carry on stitching down there. Pivot round, next side, push that in at the center, curve it round to the point that the needle is in at the moment. That's in there, and then again carry on round, but also keeping the curve into the third point. So around we go to there, pivot again for the final side, push in at the middle, and that gives a nice curve. And as I say, just use your either an awl or the end of your seam rip or a pokey tool, and carry on round to stitch to this end too. And at that end, I would just go across that point so that you are into the first couple of stitches where you started. And there we have, with our 1/4 inch seam allowance at each point, there we have our faux cathedral window made with 2 flying geese, which had just 1 seam. Thank you for watching.